Well, first of all, thank you guys for all coming, and gals and ladies and gentlemen and crocodiles and what did my dad used to juveniles and crocodiles. I woke up this morning and what came to me was, how do you know? And I said, how do I know what? How do you know? And I said, how do I know what? What do you know? And I was just lying there. These little thoughts were in my head. What do you know? And the word know is a very important word. Be still and know, right? But I thought, well, I can really only know a few things in my heart of hearts. I know that I love my Creator. I know that. And I know that I must be obedient to what He puts in my heart. And then the question comes again, how do you know? And then I remembered something that my mother-in-law used to say. She would say, I know this I know. And if she said that, you didn't challenge her because you knew that she knew it. So I was just lying there pondering this word know or knowing. And I thought, isn't that really what we're all trying to achieve, is to, not use our intellect and say, well, I know the answer to that question, but more use our spirit to know when to even open our mouth and get involved in discussions or arguments. And there's like a knowing, and I'm just tapping into it. Just like all of a sudden I'm drilling for a water well, and I'm drilling and I'm drilling, and it's just dirt, and all of a sudden I see a little bit of water start to trickle. And that's how I feel in my life, that the wellspring of knowing is just starting. And I feel like that if I keep at it, whatever that is, if I keep moving in the direction that I'm going, that I will know more of the answers to life's questions that will come up, that I won't have to really ask. They will just come at me like the water comes out of the ground. It's like, where does that water come from? We have a couple of springs at the ranch, and the water just comes out of the ground. And one of them actually fills a lake. And the wellspring of wisdom and understanding that comes from our Creator is like that wellspring of knowledge and understanding. And then you know. So it took me probably a long time to get there. But I want to know, but I don't want to intellectually know. I just want to know with my heart and my spirit what it is God wants me to know, and then I can go and do. So that's really what I have, and that's how I want to start the discussion is, how do you know? How do you know what you know? Do you ever think about it? Do you just live your life with intellectual answers to things, following the science, they say? Or do you just sometimes sit back and say, no, I don't think I'm going to go that way. Something inside tells me no. So that's the question I ask. How do you know? And it's a hard journey to get to that knowing place, that knowing of understanding, of depth, of faith, of surrender or yielding. You have to feel for a moment the uncomfortable feeling of somebody looking at you or people looking at you while you're trying to figure out what to say and you're not looking really that smart. You have to go past that and sit there and just feel it. And then all of a sudden you know. You know what you need to do. You know what you need to say. You know that your Father is flowing right through you to do the job that He wants to do with whoever you're communicating to. And I don't really like when I'm using my intellectual side. I just don't like it. It doesn't feel right anymore. It doesn't feel right when I'm doing whatever it is I do, and then I call on my intellect of my memories of things I've done. I mean, we have to do that because in life we have to use all those, our faculties, right? We have to use all these things to make decisions constantly. But there's a spiritual journey that we're on also simultaneously while we're living our lives, having to go to Walmart and go shopping or Safeway or whatever it is. And you're walking down the aisles and all that's just life that's happening around you. But in that moment, you see somebody that you've seen before and something says to you, you need to go say hello to that person. Ask them how they're doing. Talk to them. And something inside says, I've never liked that person. But you're compelled to move over to that person and have a little conversation. This actually happened to me recently. And then I found out that person killed themselves the other day. Yeah, young person, 2 kids, committed suicide. And so maybe I didn't say what I was supposed to say that day. Maybe I didn't say, hey, why don't you join us for the Sunday conversation, or how you been, or whatever it is that I could have said that would have been a little deeper than, can you tell me where to find the toilet paper? You know? So we don't know how God's trying to use us until we look back and go, was I supposed to say something more than I did, Lord? So I don't want to be on the journey of life that's on the left side of the track, if I'm saying this right. I want to be on the right side of the track, where God is using me to do His will, His good, instead of me doing my stuff. But I will tell you, I know this I know, that I'm on that journey now. And it's going to take time for me to peel off all the layers of garbage that I've layered on, like layers of paint on an old car. I remember sanding through layers of paint on an old car, and you could see, well, it started out life, it was white, then somebody painted it blue, and then somebody painted it red, and then somebody painted it black. And there's all those layers. It's like the rings of a tree when you cut a tree down. You know, that's us. And in the middle is the core. In the middle is the core, is the person that we're supposed to be, and not all the layers of life.
As you were speaking, what came to me, there's a quote in the Bible, and it says, Jesus stood up and called out in a loud voice, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, streams of living water will flow from within him. Okay? Most of our life, we are living out of conditioning and habit, the surface. So what you're talking about is going deep into the well of the Spirit to now respond to things from there instead of just what you've seen before, what your parents did. You know, you have to go to the well of living water.
It's funny. I do feel like a completely new person. Like I have the same, life that I've had. I've all the memories and all of the stuff that goes along with that life, the name, sometimes the debt, sometimes the profit. But I don't feel like the same person. Like that person has been shed almost like a caterpillar to a butterfly. Marcus Aurelius said, the object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. And for so many years, I felt like I was in the ranks of the insane, but I was on the top of the heap. I knew I was kind of crazy, but I was way less crazy than everybody else, but I was still on the crazy heap.
Remember how you used to say, in the land of the lost, the one-eyed man is king? You had the one eye.
In the valley of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. That was my favorite saying for so many years. And it's true. I did feel that I was in the valley of the blind and I was king, but I was king of the blind people, which is sad.
When I look around, I think what I see is God is trying to tell you that He's there all the time. Especially things that grow, like if you're in the woods, in the forest or something. I mean, you just kind of marvel at the things that are out there. And they seem to speak to you in a certain way that lets you know that he is there, that you're with him. Somehow there's a communion there. I think, I would like to be more aware that I could see more and more of this stuff daily. But you see it does. You don't have to be out in the woods. You can be, on the street corner and just watch and see things happen. And it's more like they unfold rather than happen. If you're aware enough, you can see that and learn from that. There's some kind of a little analogy or a parable or whatever you want to call it that is unfolding to you, and it shows you that you're on a journey. Like you said, you're on a wisdom journey, and it's a journey of joy as you receive this understanding.
It's funny because it is a journey, and as I go down my path of life, I find that I am supposed to travel and move about and go do things. And I went and bought a car last night, and after I negotiated my deal, I said, well, how about if I give you a $50 deposit and I'll come back tomorrow and pay you, which will be today right after church. And they said, okay. And I said, can you make it out to Allen Masters? And the woman, it was like she hit a brick wall. She turned around and looked at me and she goes, I know you. And I said, you do? And she says, I'm Dan's sister. Now, Dan is a guy that used to work for me that hung himself, sadly, committed suicide about 2 or 3 years ago. I said, oh, no, really? I said, I remember you too. And then we talked about her brother that I was supposed to see in Nashville the week he killed himself. I was supposed to see him, and I called him, and I said, I'm coming out. And he says, oh, great. And then, 3 or 4 weeks later, when I was going to go out, I sent him a text. I'm on my way. I'm going to be out there next week. Let's just, let's get together. And that was the week he committed suicide. He never did respond. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to find her to say, hey, where's your brother? But one of his children sent me a note, and he was a sweet guy, but lost. No father, bad parents. We see that a lot. Same thing with this young man that killed himself the other day. Fathers that don't do their jobs. Sadly, this is what we see happening in the world today. These Manchurian candidate murderers that are out there doing things. Usually they don't have a father. But so more and more in my life, I look around and I think, man, God was really trying to use me, and I was busy doing something else. So I said, well, come here, let me give you a hug. And I gave her a hug, and then we had this nice conversation about her brother, and she told me all about how he was such a great big brother, and that when the parents were fighting, he'd say, come on, let's go to the store. And he'd take his 2 little sisters, and they'd go down to the store just to get away from the parents that were fighting. And the whole conversation went on, and afterwards I said, let me give you one last hug, to hug my friend Dan that's a part of you. Because it's sad, when somebody takes their life, If we are on this journey and we're aware of what we're supposed to do with our lives for our Creator, He's sending us all to help somebody else. We are each other's angels, or we are each other's, whatever the opposite of that is. I can't say devils, but we're the tempters. We are the tool of the dark side. If we're not each other's angels, then we're the opposite, the tool of the devil. And I don't want to be a tool of the devil. So I go this morning to look at something else, and I know this guy also, and it was like so strange. And I find that I'm going out in my life, and then I said, I have to go now because I have to go to church. And oh yeah, go do what you got to do. And then I called another buddy of mine that just hit me. I need to call this friend, and I called him, and we talked all the way from the last place I was till I came in here, and I was on the phone walking in the door here, and I thanked him for all the kindness that he'd given me, and he says, anything for you, anything. And one last thing, I'm not bragging. I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but when you're walking in the light of God, or with the light of God in you it shines. And it shines. You shine. And somebody said something the other day. I went into a business and I was talking to the person and I started just talking about the day and, just a few things. And there was this old, craggly old man standing there and he made a comment. And I said, yes, exactly. And then he got in on the conversation. I was walking out the door and he says, some people just light up the room. And he didn't say that to me. He said it to her, but he said it about me, and I happened to hear it. And light up the room. Haven't we always seen, even in the TV movies and the movies on the big screen, if there's somebody that is the main character of the movie, for some reason, if they're the star of the show or whatever it is, they light up the room. And you're watching that person, you're watching them because they're the character that you're watching in the movie. And I feel like that's how God sees us. And if we see him that way, if we see that he is in us, trying to use us to do his will, then yes, we should light up the room because we have God in us. And I want to have that light in me. And I want to affect people in that way. My dad lit up the room. He walked into a room and everybody had to look at him. They don't know why they had to look at him. There was something about that man. And it was beautiful. So I want to light up the room, but not because of my ego. But that old man saw something in me and had to say it to the girls at the counter. And I heard it. Did I feel prideful? No. Did I feel thankful? Yes. And I do say that I want to work God's will in my life. And I feel completely blessed that I'm seeing that. But I think that you and you and you and you and you guys listening on the radio and all of you people in this room and around the world, you have that too. We all have it. We all need to light up the room. And when we get together, when two or more gather in his name, that's church. That's when he sees us because we light up the room for each other. We're each other's angels, you might say. We can bring life to each other, help each other with little problems and, whatever it is. But we're so busy being distracted.
One candle lights another.
There you go. I don't know. It's the strangest time in the history of my life. The world is a perilous world, but I have more happiness and joy and more lift in my step than I've ever had. And the world is falling apart around us. And I am thankful and joyful that I have this life. I guess when the times were good, I didn't have as much appreciation, but I still have appreciation for life, even when times are bad. I see the price of gasoline, $6-7 a gallon. Do I like it? Nope. Do I hate it? Nope. It is what it is. You can get angry as you want. You can get angry. Everything can make you angry. The littlest things can make you angry. Do I like it when I'm angry? Nope. Why get angry? It just is what it is. You have to, when gasoline goes expensive like that or the food goes expensive, you need to react in a positive way. So instead of reacting in a negative way, you say, well, I guess I don't need to make that trip today. Maybe I can combine 3 or 4 trips into one. Use my time more efficiently. Use my gasoline and diesel more efficiently. It just helps you to be more efficient in your life. It's not a big deal. It's a big deal if you want to keep on being frivolous and driving all over the place. My brother-in-law, I said, where are you going? He says, I'm going for my evening, what does he call it, Jan? Evening drive or scenic drive. He he just goes for a drive. Now that's going to eat into his scenic drive, isn't it? That price of gas. But I just feel like, you know what? Everything that happens, you can look at it and modify your day to deal with it. If the price of food goes expensive and maybe there's a lack of, it's probably a smart idea to start growing some food. So that's what I'm doing. We're just taking life one day at a time.
I was just going to say about the price of gas, it's not affecting us too much, but think about the truckers out there and the people, who don't have a lot of money. This is killing the economy, and don't get me going. Joe Biden and them, they are squeezing the life out of America, and all because they stopped producing the oil here. It was fine. And it's a deliberate thing that they're doing, and it's horrible.
You can hear her on Mondays on Perilous World Radio. No, absolutely, I agree that there's a lot more going on with the price of gas, but I'm talking about individually. The idea is that people get angry and then they walk around angry over whatever it may be. Somebody takes your parking space, or somebody parks too close to your car. You watch how your kind of your lower nature its ugly head will rise up. And that's what I'm focusing on, is how many times throughout the day that something tries to make me angry. And if you just watch it, you kind of like, it's like as if your neighbor drops off his wiener dog with you and says, all right, here's my wiener dog. You better going to take care of him. He gets out of everything. He can go under the bed, under the fence, and all of a sudden you've got this little wiener dog that's really controlling your life, right? And that's this anger thing. It's just constantly trying to control your life. So, but if you watch that, don't take your eye off that little dog or put it in a cage. See, there you go. Now I don't have to worry about you getting her out and causing mischief. So that's something, somebody dropped off their little demon with us. Usually it's our parents inserting fear, anger, contempt, and it's running around just causing problems, kind of like a little mongoose in there. You just got to be aware of it. Watch for it throughout your day. Watch for those little irritations, my dad used to say. He says things much more eloquently than I can. But those little irritations are what slowly but surely, like the sand in the hourglass, they're slowly but surely taking you down. And those little irritations are what you need to be conscious of. And when you see them, you can almost smile at them and say, well, it's okay. That car parked awful close to me, but I can get in there. I'll get out. It's all right. No big deal. I parked my truck in between two cars that both had parked too close to the line at Costco. And I have a big dually 1-ton. It's got big fat rear fenders. I squeezed that sucker in there because it was a nice parking space that I could back out of real easy. And I thought, those guys, when they come out, are going to hate me because I was like 8 inches away from each side. Anyway, but I got out because, I could make myself thin when I need to. And I thought to myself, well, that's too bad. They should have parked, in the middle of the parking spot like I did. But there's little things in life. I laugh at myself all the time at little things. Instead of getting angry, I look at it and laugh and say, nope. As I've said a million times, not today, Satan. It's almost a game. If you gamify, when you see yourself getting angry, you go, nope, not gonna. I used to say to my wife all the time, not gonna. Remember George Bush, the father? Not gonna. He used to say that all the time. And I think it's just so funny. We are so unaware of all the dumb things that we do to create the person that we are today. And when you hang around somebody, it's like if you were to hang around with me or I was to hang around with you, we could correct each other constantly about little dumb things. And that's what I said. We can either be each other's angels or we can help each other into the grave.
There's a movie that's really good. It's the first version of the Bedazzled. And in one scene, it's the devil talking to the guy. They're both looking at this woman walking down the street with a bag of groceries. And the devil says, it's not the big things that get you, it's the little things. And all of a sudden, the bottom of the bag of groceries comes out. And it's just a little irritations, just like you were saying. It captured that, Well,
It's funny. Last night I went into the refrigerator and I have to just out myself. I accidentally knocked the lid off of a little tub of ricotta cheese that was kind of dry, and it was just a bunch of little crumbles. And I thought, oh, shoot. It went down the back side of the fridge. I thought, it's all right. That cheese is no good anyway. And I closed the door. And then for some reason, I went back over to the fridge, and I thought, I think some strawberries and cream sounds nice. So I reached in, and I knocked that stupid little tray of cheese out of the fridge onto the ground, and that cheese went all over. Had the lid been on it nice and tight, it would have just fallen. It would have been no big deal. So to that point right there, I didn't listen to myself. I should have reached back and gotten the little lid and put it on nice and tight, and it would have been no problem. But God says, see, you don't listen to yourself. So now we're going to spill the cheese, and you're going to have to clean up the mess. That's life. And I was like, oh, no. And thankfully, Jan came over and helped me clean up. But it was just cheese everywhere. And it's just so funny. I'm just glad that it's cheese everywhere and not, a car crash. Because I think eventually when you don't listen to yourself, it gets worse and it escalates. And I don't want my life to escalate in the wrong direction. I want to escalate it upward towards the light. And then we don't have these things. We just have, I think, opportunity everywhere to help each other and to do good in this world. And, last Sunday we talked about if you live every day like it's your last day, how would you treat everybody in your life? Differently, for sure. It's hard to even get that thought in your mind. But as I'm seeing more and more people that got killed, that have killed themselves, the guy I was with this morning, I said, whatever happened to that guy Chris that we both know? He says, he died last year with COVID. And I'm like, there's another one, younger than me. And we talked about him for a little while. So both people that I saw last night and this morning, somebody in my life had both died. One committed suicide and the other one died. Who, truthfully, my feeling is a little bit from not living the right life because he was very obese. And maybe had he taken better care of himself, the COVID wouldn't have gotten him.
There's something in us that is self-destructive, and it works on us all the time, whether we know it or not. And it comes out at the worst possible time. And I saw that when I was getting sick before I ended in the hospital back in 2004. And it was raging. It didn't, a friend of mine came in and he said, you need to go to a doctor. And I said, no, I can't afford it. And, that thing in me was wanting me dead. And I realized there was a point in time where it was too late. And that's when they came and found me and dragged me over there, 2 days later. And I was pretty much room temperature.
Wow. Lucky you that you had somebody that was there enough to love you.
I didn't think I was going to make it. I rolled over and I realized, this is it. And it was funny how it was because it's not this big dramatic thing before you know you're going to die. It's just like, I'm going to die. And that was it. And there was nothing I could do. I realized there was nothing I could do. And it was too late.
Well, we're glad you didn't.
I'm glad I didn't. That's almost 20 years ago.
Wow. Well, good that you're here to do some good in your life.
Yeah.
I think in my life that there was a couple times I came close to where I felt that way. Mm-hmm. And I thought, no. I can't be getting that close. I haven't done what I'm supposed to do yet. But I think most of us, we put it off. You know what they'd say about taking vacations? You make all these plans in your life where when I reach this mark, we'll take a nice vacation, and then you reach that mark, and then, well, now I got to reach this mark, ambition, right? And then you look back at your life and you're like, wow, we didn't take very many vacations. We didn't take the time to live. We've lived our life having never really lived. And we keep putting off the inevitable. And I think the inevitable for us is, what is your purpose? And at this point now I know that we all have a purpose. We all have something we're supposed to do that we put off. That's a mistake.
Well, and usually we put it off because of selfishness. And we think we're doing it for other people, but we're not. That's just an excuse we make for ourselves. You always learn this stuff too late, it seems, but hopefully you won't learn it too late. You could learn from somebody who made some mistakes. But, I remember not taking vacations, and that's kind of a little bit of a sore spot for me, because it's time that I should have spent with the family and should have spent with the child or children. And there's no way you can go back in time. There's no way that you can, you can wish it was different. But once the child grows up, there's no way to make those memories again. And I remember my dad wasn't the greatest dad in the world, but, we went out and had campfires and cooked and things. And I wish I would have done that more with my son. Don't be selfish like I was. Spend the time with your family. There's no way you can ever explain to somebody how important it is to spend those years when your child is young with them and learn from them.
I have a friend whose mother has fallen and broken her hip. And that's how my mother passed. And they told him that she might last 5 to 7 days. And so he's on about his third day now. And she's 90 years old, and it's her time. She's in a lot of pain, and they have to give her, morphine for the pain, because it's a horrible thing. When you break a hip at an old age, it's a horrible thing. I said to him, make sure you say everything you ever wanted to say and never did. Because while she's there, tell her everything. If you love her, if you were angry at her, have conversations with her while she's there. And so I called him later on, and I said, so how's it going? He said, I told her she was a great mother, that she was always there for me. And he basically poured his heart out, and he said she opened one eye and looked at me and gave me a thumbs up. And he had his moment to be able to express his love, because we're all just little boys and little girls. And when we lose our parents and we don't have that time, that moment in time to let them know that you love them, even with all their flaws, that you love them for bringing you into this world at least, it's a lost thing. And I think that same thing is for us dads that didn't spend enough time with our kids. But you know what? God has an interesting way of giving us a second chance with grandchildren. And so, Roger, even though you may not have done enough with your kid, maybe with your grandkids is where you need to make sure that you spend that extra time.
Yeah, thanks.
It's because that's what I want to do. Is I know I spent time with my children, not enough, but my children aren't gone. They're still here. I'm going to continue spending time with them and my grandchildren. It's important for us grandparents to make sure that we know what our jobs are. The job of being a dad is never done until you draw your last breath. And you may have great grandchildren like my father and mother did. And so we have jobs. Jobs come from God. If he gives you children, and your job is to bring those children up. And if you make a mistake there, well, you're going to try and fix it in your life the best you can. And if you can't with your children, then the next is your grandchildren. Maybe it's the kid down the street the neighbor boy, whatever it is, when you wake up. Take your role.
Just reminded me of a story Beverly told, and she's not here, who had some really bad situations with her children, but she had a situation with her grown daughter to be there for her. So you never know what may come up between your adult son where you can be there for him. There's still opportunities. You know what I'm saying? Even though you didn't do everything you could have when they were young, there may be ways, as your child is now an adult, that you can be there in a good way.
Because don't forget, the bus comes by every day at 2 o'clock. You have another chance to catch the bus. I think we judge ourselves so harshly for making mistakes, but those mistakes are actually the building blocks of the character that we have today to be able to do something good with now. When's the best time to plant a tree? 30 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today. And I have a tree in my backyard that I planted when it was my dad's house 40 years ago. And now that tree provides shade for us. It's about 100 feet tall. And I go, I planted that tree 40 years ago. And then my dad sold the house for about 15 years. And then 23 or 4 years ago, I bought it from the guy he sold it to. And I remember saying, I planted that tree, and now it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. That's our life. When's the best time to plant a tree? Well, we probably missed that 30 years ago. But every now and then in your life, when I heard that one, I went, I planted that tree 40 years ago. It was a really good time to plant a tree. And we hear these little sayings that we go, yeah, that's it. That's it right there. That's it. And the next best time is today. And so it's funny, I have 3 or 4 trees in pots that we've been growing in these pots now for a couple of years. And I keep looking at these trees going, I got to find a place to plant those trees so that when my kids buy my house someday, because my daughter and her husband are in my father's old house. When my kids buy my house, when I'm gone, there'll be more trees that I planted that will provide shade or fruit for my children. If not my children, someone. The seeds that we plant and the trees that we plant grow up and do good if we nurture them. And those are the relationships. Like the guy I was talking to on the way here, I thanked him for giving me advice on just dumb stuff, cars and things. And he's a man of the world, but I thanked him, and he says, for you, anything, anytime, anything. Relationships, you build them over time, and they issue fruit. It's the fruit of the relationship. The relationship is fruitful. Every bit of our lives counts, and we don't even realize it. It counts towards the bad, to the negative, for the mean and cruel and rude and evil things that you do, and it also counts towards the good, for the good things that you do, the kindness that you do.
I don't know what love is. I don't know what building relationships are. I only see when I'm wrong, and I know that I can't fix it. And I don't know what it means to go out and do good. I just am. And if I am hiding, I see that I'm hiding. And if I'm pushing too hard to be out in the front, I see that. Maybe later than I should, but I see it. And that's life. To me, that is what life is meant to be, that journey. And it's not about big plans and big ambitions or fashioning a great life or saving my kids or saving my grandkids. My parents were good parents who tried to be different than their parents because their parents weren't right. And as hard as they tried, it hurt me. And I saw that, and I saw the blame in me to blame them, and I saw that wasn't right. I don't know how I saw it, but I just did. And so I was different. And my parents both wanted to be around me more than anybody. But I didn't have anything to say or do. I just was different. And I didn't know I was different. I didn't understand. I just live it. As that one of your lectures says, live it.
And I would say that you described pretty much how I live my life. I just go out into my life every day with no grand design whatsoever. And the next thing you know, I happen upon something that could use my help, whether it's the garden that needs to be weeded, or, something that needs to be repaired in the shop, or a person that needs a smile. I have no grand design whatsoever. And even with my children, I look back and I have a tiny bit of guilt for things that I've done in my ignorance, in my foolishness, in my pride, in my ambitious time of my life. But I don't want to go out and try and fix them, because then it's my will. But if I'm just present for them, the present that I give them is the presence that I give them. And it happens on its own, magically. I don't have to try anything. I don't have to actually do anything other than just wake up, sit up, get up, and show up. And that's all I'm doing in my life. I don't know what I'm going to do from day to day. People are, what are you going to do today? I don't know. I'm going to walk out the door. Well, I do know. I'm going to go feed my cows. And from there, I may see something that needs to be done, which I do. Yesterday, I had this piece of, a bunch of metal pieces that were welded together to make something that is got no use to anyone, but I kept keeping this thing. And I kept wondering, why am I keeping this thing? I don't know. And metal's expensive these days. If you go to buy metal, it's very expensive. So I kept moving it from place to place to place to place to place. And the scrap guy came by one day to pick up some stuff that he drove by and saw that I had a pile of stuff. And he's like, you want to take that to the scrap yard? I'll take it away for you, because metal's expensive. And I said, no, but you can take this and that. And he goes, okay. He goes, here's my card. Call me anytime. I can take those cars or this, that. I go, oh, no, you're going to take my cars. But this one strange cage of a thing that had, I've been moving around for about 5 years, it finally found its use. So I needed to make something. And this is just a funny story I want to tell. It's just kind of funny. And so I'm measuring, and I thought, well, I'll take it over and have somebody make it. And I thought, no, I've got that metal. So I measure 24 inches here and 26 inches there. And if I just make a little square thing, and I can do this. And I went over to this thing that I've been moving from place to place to place. And I measured it, and it was the exact measurement. Down to it was 25 and a half inches. And it needed to be 25 and a half. So I went, it's the exact right amount. Of course it is. Because it has a purpose for me, because I've been moving it around. So there it is. So I found its purpose. So then I thought, well, how am I going to cut this metal? Well, I have an old torch that I think I've never used. I've been carrying it around for 20 years. I've loaned it to people. And the last time I did any cutting must have been 30 or 40 years ago. I couldn't even remember how to start the torch. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to really go into my memory banks. And I turned on the bottles, and I know oxygen and acetylene, and acetylene is the one that burns. And so I opened it up, and I lit it, and sure enough, I got some acetylene in that bottle. And then I turned on the oxygen, and I remember how to use a torch. It came back to me. I'm cutting this thing, and I want to be real careful, because I want to preserve the shape of it and everything, so I can use it on this other thing I'm trying to fix. And my phone rings, and I could feel it vibrating in my back pocket, and I'm cutting, and I thought, I can do this. And I'm cutting, and I pull my phone out while I'm cutting, and I'm like, hello? My friend says, what are you doing? I said, I'm cutting with a torch right now. He said, I know, I can hear it. He said, you're crazy. I said, no, I can do two things at once. And it was so funny. And then my son-in-law walks up while I'm talking on the phone with a cutting torch in my hand, cutting the metal. And he says, what are you doing? I said, I'm talking on the phone while I'm cutting with a cutting torch. And all these things are going on. And I started laughing at all the funny things, how we can juggle dishes, We can do all these silly things in our life. And he says to me, you're not doing that right. I said, sure I am. He says, no, there's not enough oxygen. He says, here, give me that thing. And he tried 8 times to light that torch, because he was putting too much oxygen in it. And it was just the moment in time in my life where I was having so much fun doing something that is so stupid and useless, but it ends up having a use. So anyway, I cut this piece out, and I'm going to make another something with it. And I felt so happy. I said, see there, that thing finally had a use. And he's the one that kept saying, why don't you throw that away? But what I'm getting to here with this point is that life to me is a joy every day. With all the little dumb things I do that some have no meaning to anybody else, I walk through my day and I walk with a joy in my heart and a glee and a happiness that I've never had in my life. And there's no design to it whatsoever.
To match your story of iron, the other day I was looking at my property and I had an irrigation system and one of the plants along the sidewalk was growing up and interfering with the pattern of the irrigation. So that meant other plants weren't going to get their water. So I transplanted that plant. In order to do that, I had to dig into the soil and dig down through the decomposed granite that is the fill dirt on my property. And I can't put the decomposed granite in my garden because nothing will grow there. So I put it aside in a 5-gallon bucket. And it sat there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And I got to a project I put off for a couple of years, and I had to relay a paver sidewalk. And I thought, well, I could probably use that decomposed granite as the subbase for this paver sidewalk. It works perfectly. And I did, sure enough. I started tearing up the sidewalk and putting in the dirt that I had in that 5-gallon bucket, and it didn't look like it was going to be enough, but it turns out I finished the whole sidewalk, and it was enough where I needed it. And this morning I get up at the first light lately because I have a problem with snails in my garden. And I found out that snails, before the sun comes up, just as there starts to be light, the snails go to their hiding place, and that's when you catch them. And so I go out every morning to look for snails. Got 5 this morning. Because they destroy my garden. It took me 3 years to find that out. So I'm walking in the bare day. It's almost dark, just barely daylight, no sun at all. And I'm walking down the sidewalk looking for the snails on the sides of the sidewalk. And this is the walk I just laid down, and I could feel under my feet that somehow the pavers were in a better slope somehow than they ever were before. Never intended to do it, but somehow I just noticed going down this sidewalk is way better than it was a week ago before I had relayed it with the dirt that was left over from the plant that I replanted. It all just sort of fits together. And you're doing nothing. You're doing stupid little things. But life, you have the sensitivity to notice, oh, that is better. And you don't know, it wasn't that you set out to make it better, it just became better because some other thing that you tried to use up.
It's funny, my contractor that does tile when we remodel our house, he calls me a funny name. He says that I'm cheap because I watch what he does, and when he gives me the bill, I always call him out as, now you took too much time on this or too much time on that, and I'm tough because he's expensive. But he calls me Krabs, like Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob, and he also, because I have pinchers as hands because I'm always, cheap pinching him with my claw hands. And then he says to me the other day, he says, Krabs. I said to him, that tile is not straight. And he looks at it and he says, sure it is. And I said, no, it's not straight. And he puts his level on it and he goes, sure enough, Krabs, you've got an 8-pound eyeball. And I thought, isn't that funny? An 8-pound bowling ball, you know how big that is. An 8-pound eyeball means that you can see if something is off. And what you just described, Chuck, well, now I'm going to call you the snail hunter, is that your feet were conscious of something. Almost like your feet spoke to you and said, the surface is better for some reason. And I can walk through my house and my feet can tell little areas where when they put the hardwood floor down, it was a little higher here or higher there. And so all of our senses and all of our body becomes an extension of our consciousness. From your feet to the top of your head. If a fly lands on your hair, can you feel it? Sometimes you can. Have you ever had that? A fly or a bug gets in your hair, and the top of your head gets a sensation. So what I'm saying is that when you're conscious, every bit of you gives you little signals. Have you ever heard anybody say, the hair on my neck stood up? Right? Every bit of you can help you navigate through life, and you should listen, because it all helps you in one way or another, whether it's the work that you do. Like I used to be a body man and do body and paint, and you really have to use your hands and your eyes to feel the body. And like if you're wet sanding the car, you can feel little imperfections. And then what I used to do when I was sanding a car is I would get the car wet to where it would be super shiny. And you could look down the side of the car like it had a new coat of paint on it, and you could see the little imperfections. So if you couldn't feel them with your hand, you could see them with your eye. And you use all these senses that you have to do your job. And we're supposed to do that in living our life, sensing things about people, knowing whether a person's telling a lie just by using your 8-pound eyeball. I see this to be the truth, or I see this to be a lie. Your senses will tell you a lot about life, but we get so desensitized. We don't trust our own senses. Then we start getting stomach aches. Wasn't that interesting how I remember my dad saying, you can feel it in your solar plexus, right? Have you ever heard my dad say that? I used to go, what does he mean by that? But when we get stomach aches, when we get uncomfortable, these are all things that are the same as when you can tell and you feel something, that is out of place. Those signs are telling you something also. The problem is, again, we're out of touch. Jan would say to me, like the other day you said, you're not in touch with your body.
Sometimes you aren't aware of symptoms you're having till it's too late, like with your gallbladder, stuff like that.
So that's right. That was 2019. And I had a gallbladder problem, and I had to have my gallbladder out, but it almost killed me. It literally almost killed me. I was on my way to death. When they're giving you morphine to keep the pain away, and it's enough morphine, the guy says, to put out an elephant, you better know that you're getting close, because they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, and they eventually did. But man, oh man, that was a journey. Yeah, I was doing something egotistically. I was going to be on TV, and I go on a diet every year to be on TV. And I was trying this new diet thing that my daughter was into. And, but I quadrupled down on it. I was living on these shakes, high protein shakes, and I was kind of destroying my gallbladder. Not kind of, I did. In this life that I'm living now, I'm listening to all my senses. But the one that I'm listening to more than any is the one of the Spirit, which really is master over all the others. And the problem is that we think that we are the master of all that we do, the ego. And we think that we, can do whatever we want until such times as it shows us that we can't. Whatever it's going to be, gallbladder or whatever it might be. But as I'm being guided now from a spiritual point of view, I'm listening to all these things, and man, life is changing at a breakneck speed. And it's fun. Life is so much more rewarding and joyful. So this meditation thing that we've heard about and done for years, man, there's something to that, you guys. Be still and know. That really is the key. And, I've heard it my whole life, but until you start living it, it's just a bunch of words. The Bible's just a book until you start knowing it and understanding it and letting it speak to you. So it really boils down to making the choice to be sincere in your quest for the search for your Creator and the path that you're supposed to have in your life.
This will be fast. I just want to say how quiet this whole room is. Every time I'm here, there's no organs and pianos and people, choruses singing. And so it's just conducive to being quiet and listening. And in between, when you're saying something or there's a pause, wow, it's so quiet. It's nice.
It is nice. We have very little quiet in our life. I find that I don't even want to turn the radio on in my car anymore. I don't care about what's going on out there in the world. It'll find its way, the information will find its way to me. And when I'm by myself, that quiet is kind of precious. And every now and then I look at this new car, the fancy radio, and oh, it has satellite radio. Oh, it has everything. It has internet. It has everything. I can do whatever I want. Constant distraction. I don't think I've turned on the radio in my vehicle in months. I drive to, an hour away and half an hour out to the ranch or wherever I'm going. No radio, just sit with myself. I remember my dad always used to say, just sit quietly. Blaise Pascal. All of mankind's problems stem from his inability to sit in a room by himself quietly. And now I find that it's just joyful. It's like a glass of cool, fresh water for a thirsty soul. Amen.
Just responding to what Chuck was saying about love and relationships, I feel that a lot of people lose that sensitivity or that awareness of the importance of connection because of the hurt from mother and father. If you have a mother and father that have some sort of love and are able to connect with you, you appreciate that connection. But when you're constantly hurt by your parents, you sort of discard the notion of connection as even being important. And I know that I felt that way to a certain extent, but I have learned that that is what life is about, is learning to love and connecting in the right way. When God puts that love in your heart for another person, it's a beautiful thing. Why do I care? Something in me cares. It's from Him. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Carl Jung, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, of which I think I talked about that, all those little irritations.
On YouTube, they have conversations with Carl Jung, and they're very interesting. But he seems to be a guy that's pretty sharp.
Another one, of course, is Jordan Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson. He is really, really sharing some wisdom right now.
Yeah, all the things you don't do or do, the child can see the intent of the parent. And I looked at my mom, and she had a good intent. She wasn't perfect by any close measure of the imagination, but she was the best she could be. And one thing she did for us when I was growing up was she'd get about 3 to 4 weeks off for vacation, and so she would load us up in the station wagon, and we'd spend a month traveling through all the campsites on the western states. And she was a real outdoors person, so every morning we'd go on a hike, and she loved camping. So I loved the outdoors. I grew up fairly rugged because of that, and not that I could think that I could live in the woods for a month or anything, but it just gave me a good background.
That's nice. My dad used to like to go sailing and fishing, and I hated sailing, but I sure liked fishing. And he was a fisherman, and I have a picture of him with a 12-foot shark with him holding its nose up in the air with a mouth hanging open and a big old giant hook barely in its mouth. But he used to go out fishing, and every now and then he'd go with his friends and go shark fishing, and he wouldn't let us kids go because it was dangerous. And he brought that big shark in that one time. That's my favorite picture of my dad. He became a fisher of men and women. And but I am enjoying my life. I hope that you folks are beginning to find some peace as we do these conversations and we're living our lives, and there's peace for us. But you have to make sure that you're still so you know where it's supposed to be coming from. Be still and know. That I know.
Just to follow back on how you started the talk today, I really like what you said about drilling down for that water. And there's another quote in the Bible is, where does that water come from? It says here in Revelation, then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. That's where the water comes from. And each one of us, we need to live from that well. And that's where the meditation takes you. It's deep. You have to drill deep. And that's how we bring heaven to earth. It comes from the throne of God.
I remember one time doing a business deal in New York City, and the guy that I was trying to do the deal with said about another person, I don't like that guy because he acts like he knows everything. The problem with him is his knowledge is a mile wide but an inch deep. He said, I'm looking for somebody that has a depth of understanding like you. And I thought to myself, wow, I don't know if I can live up to that, because so many of us, we act a certain way. You know, they say fake it till you make it. And then one day you make it and you realize, oh my gosh, I've faked it. And in that very moment in time, I thought to myself, I don't think I can live up to what this man thinks I can do. But it was because I doubted myself. And doubt has destroyed more entrepreneurs than anything. I had to really look at myself and say, no, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to move ahead and deal with one thing at a time. And I'm not going to fake it anymore. I'm going to say, I don't know if I don't know, instead of faking it till you make it. But yesterday when I was working back to my welding thing, at the end, when I was putting everything away, my son-in-law says, what you should do is this, that, and the other. I said, well, I think what I'm going to do is just cut the pieces and take it down to the shop and have them put it all together. He says, why? He says, you should do it. You have all the tools to do it. He said, you just are doubting yourself that you can do it right. I couldn't believe he said that to me, because it was the truth. I know I can do it. It's ridiculous. I know I can do it. But there was a little lazy side of me that says, oh, you can't do it right. And for just a moment, I listened to it, and I thought, well, it's easier to have somebody else do it. So I decided in that moment, I thought, yeah, I'll just do it. But the doubt monster is always under the bed. And all it really is just a dust bunny. We just have to remember that. Doubt is a killer. Doubt is the opposite of faith. Thanks for coming, everybody. See you next week. Well, first of all, thank you guys for all coming, and gals, and ladies and gentlemen, and crocodiles, and what did my dad used to, juveniles and crocodiles. I woke up this morning, and what came to me was, how do you know? And I said, how do I know what? How do you know? And I said, how do I know what? What do you know? And I was just lying there, these little thoughts were in my head. What do you know?